What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 2. Today, we're gonna talk on a more serious topic, and that's losing a loved one. Now, everyone, I'm sure, at some point has had somebody that they know, whether they know them personally or if maybe they don't know them as well, but they've heard of them, and somebody passes away, and it's devastating. I mean, anytime anybody loses anybody, it's heartbreaking, especially if you were really close to that person. I have had in the past, I think it's 2 years, it'll be 2 years in January, I lost my grandfather to technically what was COPD. Now, he had been battling with COPD for many, many years. And probably within the last, 3 years maybe of his life, maybe more, he had stage 4 lung cancer. So he was dealing with COPD and cancer on top of it. And once we got that news, hearing that, I'm like, oh, snap. I'm like, this man is in his 70s. This can't be good. But kind of a little backstory about that is, as far as I've known, my grandfather, he always smoked. But I think at one point, probably way before I was born, he smoked cigarettes. But I think, as far as I've known him, he's always smoked cigars. And then, I don't know how long ago, 15 years maybe more than that, I was probably 10, maybe younger than that. I can't remember. He just decided, I'm going to go cold turkey and just cut this off. I don't want to do this anymore. And so he did. So it's kudos to him for, wanting to kick a habit and not look back. But I think because he had smoked for as long as he did, it kind of caught up to him. So when he first was diagnosed with COPD, we're like, okay, we can manage that. It's not too terrible. It's okay, well, he was a previous smoker. So it's we'll deal with it how it is. And then later on, as he got older, he would have to have, I think, at least 1, maybe 2 surgeries, kind of going there, fixing his lungs. I know for one of the surgeries that he had, I think it was the last one that he had, one of his lungs actually collapsed. And so they had to go in there, fix that, and get that taken care of. And I believe they got it, fixed enough so that way he's able to continue going through life and whatnot. But I'm sure, anytime you're working on a pretty vital organ, you have restrictions. So I think at that point he was on oxygen, and I think he was on oxygen full time. And even at that point, when my grandparents would come to visit us, we could tell that this illness that he had just taken a toll on his body. And then probably a couple years or so after he was diagnosed with COPD, then we got the news that, okay, there's cancer in his body and he has stage 4. And I'm just thinking, dang, he didn't even get to work up to, it's just boom, he has the worst type of cancer that you can have in your lungs. And it's oh, now we have to start thinking things differently, because we all know how serious cancer is, and how it has a mind of its own, but I know there are so many cases of people having different types of cancer and overcoming it. And we just thought, he's going to be the type that can overcome this. It's if he's able to get a grasp and handle on COPD and get, his body working to, how it should, we're he got this, And so probably within the last year or two of his life, I know that we hadn't seen him as much. I think my grandparents had came down kind of at, we didn't know this at the time, but it would have been one of the last times that, my grandfather would came visit us. And you could just see that, again, like the illness was just taking over his body, and he was feeling it, and you could just tell. So we enjoyed the time that we, because we didn't think that things would take, the route that they did, but I mean, it's life. Things like that happen. So probably it would have been about maybe around this time, about 2 years ago. It was like right after Christmas, because we went up in January, like the beginning of January, maybe even like after the second week, like after the first week, we went to, go up and see my grandfather, check on him, because we knew we had kind of gotten that call from my grandma saying, I think this is going to be it, And so we're driving up there. And mind you, they live in Montana. So even driving it, just, even with mostly adults, it's still kind of a trip. So we get out there and we're just, mentally preparing for what could happen or what's gonna happen. And I'm sure everybody was on edge, I was more feeling for my grandma, because I'm like, this is the person that she has been with pretty much her whole life. And this person is about to be taken away from her. Like, it's just crazy to think. But I mean, we all know it's a part of life, we can't all live forever. It would be nice if we could, but that's not how it works. But so we're getting there, and it's like, I think when we get there, it was like later at night. So we're all like kind of getting ready for bed, kind of chatting a little bit and stuff. Even on our way to going out there, on our drive out there, we kept in touch with my grandma, and we had gotten the news. We were about 3 hours out that they were coming home, or they were going to the hospital to kind of see how things were. And then we got a call saying, good news, I guess, that the cancer is gone. So at this point, he has no cancer. The cancer's completely left his body, and now he's just technically dealing with COPD, and is, again, fighting for his life at this point. So that was kind of a backtrack. Now, kind of fast forward to the night that we get to my grandparents' house, where, again, we're all talking, just kind of catching up, just kind of bracing ourselves mentally for what's going to happen. And we all are like, all right, we'll go to bed and then just kind of assess, we'll just take it day by day kind of thing. We all go to bed. I think about midnight. I think my mom comes down. She says, hey, I think this is going to be it. We should probably say our goodbyes. I think he's going. I think Grandpa's going. I'm like, oh, geez. And I'm just like, that's not really how you want to be woken up in the middle of the night, is to be like, hey, this person is starting to, transition to the afterlife. Like, so I know my nerves were personally shot. And it was hard for me, because I didn't want to see this person that I had known all my life, that had always been such a strong influence and a strong person my whole life. I did not want to see this person at a weak moment. And it was hard. It was very hard to see this person that I looked up to so much in my life, and they're literally struggling, fighting for their life. And it hit, I mean, if I'm going to be honest, it was something that I had never seen or really dealt with this personally, this close before. So it definitely was shocking, and emotions were just all over the place. It gets to me, my mom and my aunt are like, hey, you can say your final words, whatever you feel like saying, go ahead. And I know at first I was very hesitant because I'm like, I don't know if I want to do this. I don't even know if I can do this, because it's like, everything was just going, and all my emotions were all over the place. But I finally was like, you know what, I need to do this. I'm like, the last thing that I, even if this person wasn't necessarily consciously aware of everyone around, I didn't want them to know, like, that I was, kind of shooken up. So I mustered up the courage and was like, all right, I'll find some words to say. Didn't know what I was going to say, because I'm like, I don't know really what you say in this situation. I think what I ended up saying was, I said something about how I wish the kids could have, my two kids that I have, could have at least, not necessarily been there, but they could have at least been around enough so that way they know, because I know my son he's not going to know who he is, because when he was born, he was very little. And then my grandpa probably at the time, I think, only had like a couple years left in him anyways. So he's not going to know who he is. And that was kind of sad, because I'm like, dang, he's never going to know who this, person is and how much I looked up to him. But I know my daughter was old enough. She was able to remember seeing him when he would come to visit. So I just said, I kind of wished, I wish that, I'm like, your great-grandson would have been able to meet you, and I wish Emma would have been able to, just kind of see you one last time. And it felt kind of awkward, because I'm like, is this really what I'm saying? I'm really saying this after? Okay. But yeah, so then once we said our final goodbyes, we're like, all right, we'll just go back to bed and, do what we need to do. And then we get woken up, I like 3:30, 3:45 or something. I think how it happened, because my mom had came down again and was like, yep, he's gone, he's no longer with us. And I think my grandma said she found out because she rolled over, felt like just touched his arm, and he was ice cold. And I think that's how she knew he was gone. And again, I have never experienced losing somebody this close and experiencing death like this. This was a completely new level. This was all new to me. And there are times that when I think about, okay, coming in January, with him passing, there are images that are in my head that are very concerning, and pretty scary and shocking, and I can't get those out of my head. But I keep telling myself, even though those images are embedded in your head, you have to look at things differently, and you have to look at the upside. So that's pretty much what I did, is I just was like, yes, it was a sad time, but you know what? I got to live like 29 years, I think, 28 years, whatever it was at the time, just knowing that I had the best grandfather that I could have ever imagined. And I would go to my parents and I'm like, tell me stories about our relationship and how, you know, how things were between us. And almost every story, it'd be like, he loved you. You were his, even though, because like I was the first grandkid. So it's like, of course, I'm kind of, you know, put on a pedestal a little bit. But I was his little buddy. He would take me everywhere. And, I always, as I grew older, I always valued what he said. Because I knew he wasn't playing around. And then I just think of all the laughs and just all the time and all the different memories that we shared together as a family. And it's just going into this holiday season, it's tough because especially since, again, in January, it'll be 2 years. And it just doesn't seem like it just seemed like it happened just recently. And there's not a day that a birthday or a holiday goes by that I'm not just like, Grandpa, I wish you were here. But it's definitely been a challenge, But now I make it a priority now to call my grandma and just check on her, because I know it was hard for her. She lost the person that she was with for, I think, 52 years, I think at the time, 51. Which that's a long time to be with somebody for over 50 years. That's crazy. But I'm making my mission to call her, whether it's once a week, more than once a week, just call her. And just, see how her life's going. And just tell her that I love you. And even today, with the family that I still have that are still around, I always try to make it clear and just call them up, or if I go visit them, or whatever the case may be. I know it's kind of harder sometimes with all the COVID stuff going around. You can't just always just up and go. Call and say, hey, I love you. And if you guys can take anything from this episode, it's just hold your loved ones a little tighter, a little closer. Tell them you love them. Because you never know when it's going to be their time. So with that being said, I'm going to get off here. We've been chatting for quite a bit. I hope y'all learned things. I hope y'all could connect with this episode a little bit. And with that being said, I'll see you in the next one. Peace.